Hello, everyone. First, I would like to thank the Mesopotamia Observatory of Justice for the organization of this conference. To my knowledge, until today, there have been very few events like this one dedicated to LGBTQAI plus rights in prison, bringing together different stakeholders and also in a public setting. I'm all the more pleased that this conference is taking place at the University of Geneva, where I work daily, usually not on Saturday, though. In 2021, I began a PhD thesis in comparative law on the placement of trans people in prison. I am to determine the criteria used by the international detention law, the Swiss and the French prison law, as well as by prison administration in practice to decide the placement of trans individuals behind bars. In a second phase of this thesis, I analyzed the compliance of these criteria with human rights. Today, I will present part of this research focusing mainly on the Swiss and French context, as other presentation will and have already covered part of the international detention law standards, and I don't want to be too repetitive. First, I will begin with sex segregation, ou séparation des sexes en français, a legal and spatial rule that determines the placements of inmates based on two mutually exclusive categories, men and women. It's within this binary framework that the placement of incarcerated trans people is carried out. To better outline its contour and understand how sex segregation became established as a guiding principle of prison law and prison organization, I will address its foundation from a historical perspective. And secondly, I will present the placement procedure for trans people in prison outlined in Swiss and French prison law, as in the prison practices. While the emergence of sex segregation in prison is commonly attributed to the 19th century, its legislative origin actually date back from the medieval era. In the Middle Ages, prison was primarily a place of coercion for the temporary confinement of a person. But it could also serve as subsidiary to corporal and financial punishment as a punitive space. This period in Europe saw the adaptation of existing building into prison, or even their construction, alongside the development of normative regulation of these spaces. Although ancient French law is pretty diverse, it's possible to identify the sources of legislative production through the royal edictal power. During the 14th and 15th centuries, the legislative consecration by royal authority of the separation of men and women in prisons appears in the writing of several kings. For example, you can read in the text displayed behind me that by confirming the privilege granted to the city of Figeac, Charles VI requests separate confinement due to the diversity of sexes implied as biological and for the safeguarding of women's modesty. The modalities of incarceration derived from medieval confinement law can also be identified through local habits and customs established by customary rules. One example is the Somme Rurale by Jean Boutillier, a preeminent French customary law expert of the late 14th century, which contains a synthesis of the law in force in northern France. As you can see, separation is enshrined in a provision addressed to both the subject of the law and the jailers, which stipulates that women must not be detained with a man, as she should be placed in a safe and closed room in the company of another woman. The implementation of sex segregation in Middle Ages prison is more notably contrasted. Mixed gender detention was widespread due to its financial advantages and because of architectural constraints. The segregation norm will be constantly reinforced with the rise of penology, while European reformers tirelessly question which model of confinement to favor in the 19th century. They nonetheless agreed on the principle of sex segregation. The justification for this classification is not only to protect women from potential male violence, but it's also justified by imposing an additional deprivation on male inmates, the access to heterosexual sexuality, sorry. The presence of women will thus undermine the prison's ambition for the moral reform of men. In support of this vision, reformers defined the modality for implementing sex segregation. More than just a simple sex division within a closed space, it must apply to all aspects of confinement, transport, religious services, etc., reflecting an obsession with imposing a strict non-mixity. In light of the observed failure of effective separation within the same facility, the prison theory is also driven by the desire to see distinct prison for each sex, which will be reflected by the law, but with limited success in practice, actually, because in both France and Switzerland, there is not today, as there was not in the 19th century as well, an equal numbers of facilities dedicated to men and women. Women are more mostly detained in a small section within men's prison. Today, sex segregation can be found in the French penitentiary code. In Switzerland, however, such segregation has not been mandatory under federal law since 2007. The Federal Council concluded that based on purely pragmatic reason that, I quote, at the level of planning, organization, and cost, such separation is not always justified. Article 377 of the Swiss Penal Code now gives cantons the freedom, but does not require them to provide for such a separation between men and women in prison. The Latin Concordat, which applies in the canton of Romandie, Geneva included, has chosen to impose it, as is it the case in most of the cantons and in prison. In Switzerland, the possibility for mixed gender incarceration could thus be considered under federal law, but it remains largely theoretical, as sex segregation continues to be one of the pillars of prison organization in practice. The placement of trans person is a source of tension regarding sex segregation. Where should trans detainees be placed? This question has been around for a while now and is not a new phenomenon, as you can read sometimes. One example amongst others is the story of Zouzou, as told by Le Journal Amusant in 1926, a popular French weekly satirical news magazine. Zouzou was identified, as I quote, an hermaphrodite, because they say they have no sex. Zouzou is a suspect in a burglary case. Examined by two different doctors to identify the gender and send them to a male or woman prison. The prosecution finally decided that Zouzou will be on provisional release and not go to a prison, since the gender couldn't fit in the gender binary of the prison system. Today in Switzerland, as in France, the prison practices regarding the placement of trans persons are pretty disparate. In Switzerland, trans individuals are usually placed in prison based on the genitalia and or on their civil status, more rarely based on their expressed gender identity. In Switzerland, where the execution of criminal sanction is primarily the responsibility of the canton, there is no legal framework at the national, intercantonal, and cantonal levels. Although two cantons out of 26 stands out as exceptions. It's the one listed on the slide. The canton of Vaud established a derogatory regime to sex segregation for transsexual or transgender individuals whose placement is subject to appropriate assessment. The prison law of the canton of Belleville stipulates that the gender identity of the incarcerated person is taken into the extent possible. While this rule allows for a potentially better consideration of gender identity in the placement process, they nonetheless leave a wide margin of discretion to prison administrations. Many elements could therefore be interpreted, included under the words taken into the extent possible. A valid justification could be, for example, the one provided by the Director General of the Geneva Office of Detention. When asked about the possibility of placing trans person in the women's section of the Geneva prison Chandolon, given that a prison in Zurich has done so, he believed that the infrastructure is an obstacle. The director reveals that the women's unit does not have the cell capacity to accommodate more inmates, and therefore it would be more favorable to place trans person, including trans women, with the men. This is an interesting justification, as it will not occur to him to do the same for cisgender women when the women unit is full. In France, official discourse evolves and sometimes contradicts itself regarding the prison placement of trans persons. According to the Minister of Justice in 2010, the prison administration was bound by the mention of sex on official documents to place trans persons in prison. In 2021, the new Minister of Justice considered that the prison administration could derogate to the rule of sex segregation to respect the gender identity of trans individuals and their wishes regarding the placement, regardless of the civil status. However, this statement, which merits following the Yogyakarta principle, contradicts the French legislative power. Indeed, the National Assembly has refused twice in 2018 and in 2023 to add self-determination as the criteria for the placement of trans persons in a prison. The National Assembly only agreed in 2022 to add gender identity to the anti-discrimination kind of norm provided at Article L6 of the Prison Code. In practice, the placement in French prisons is different from one prison to another, or even within the same prison, depending on the sensitivity or on the insensitivity of the prison direction toward gender identity or the profile of the incarcerated person. Trans persons have no guarantee that the placement will correspond to the self-determined gender, even if they have obtained legal recognition of it before. Some French prisons indeed relied on the genitals discovered during the entrance search to determine the placement. Also, prison-based placement on certain bodily and clothing indicators, such as the presence or the absence of breast, a wig, sometimes painted nails, or the outfit in which the person arrived in detention. Most often, for trans women, the presence of a penis is nearly disqualifying for being placed with cisgender women. France has also a specific unit for trans women within the men's section of the Fleury-Mérogis prison. Located on the isolation wing, it follows the same rules designed to hide inmates from the view of all the other population, prison population. While this arrangement does offer protection for two trans women from potential assault by other inmates, it undermines the effectiveness of many human rights. Le contrôleur général des lieux de privation de liberté, the French monitoring body established under the OPCAT, has qualified placement of trans persons in this unit as a discriminatory practice. The rule of sex segregation is slowly becoming a topic of debate in public space and in medias. A question about recognition of third gender, not indicating one gender on civil status record or even abolishing the genders marker altogether are being raised in some legal systems. In Switzerland, for example, the National Ethics Commission's task with addressing these issues has concluded that while sex segregation in prison is considered essential for the protection of inmates, abandoning the binary gender system will not hinder this protective aim. Thus, it could be possible to eliminate sex segregation in prison if the gender binary were abolished in the civil status law. On the other hand, voices from radical feminist movements, usually known as TERF, openly opposed to granting any rights to trans individuals, are actively advocating for maintaining sex segregation in prison according to its original conception, which means no trans woman in cisgender woman prison. Protests were organized in front of prison and at the Scottish Parliament during the Isla Bryson case in the UK, led by groups such as For Women Scotland and Keep Prison Single Sex. That is actually the name of that group. In France, the 2023 feminist manifesto written by Dora Muto and Marguerite Stern, along with the numerous appearances on the media, also illustrates how the issue of sex segregation and the placement of trans persons in prison has become an argument in the fight against trans rights in prison or in society as part of a larger international anti-gender movement. Thank you for your attention.
Bonjour, Patrick Berger d'Amnesty. C'était juste une réflexion sur la situation juridique des pays. Il y a des pays comme l'Équateur ou l'Afrique du Sud qui, dans leur constitution, ont clairement défini une protection des personnes LGBTIQ. Mais dans la pratique, quand on voit ce qui se passe dans les ghettos noirs, par exemple, c'est pas du tout mis en pratique, quoi. Donc, la situation juridique et la situation réelle d'un pays diffèrent un peu, quoi.
Oui, effectivement. Alors, on se retrouve des fois dans des situations où l'orientation sexuelle et l'identité de genre y est clairement mentionnée. Et puis après, dans l'application, dans l'idéal, c'est ce qu'il faudrait. Il faut avoir que des dispositions soient précises en ce qui concerne l'orientation sexuelle et l'identité de genre et que les dispositions soient appliquées.
Parce que, par exemple, en Chine, les gens étaient accusés de déviation sociale. Donc, pas contre l'homosexualité en elle-même, mais pour comportement asocial. Oui, oui. En Chine, par exemple, les personnes étaient accusées de comportement asocial sans mentionner leur orientation sexuelle ou leur identité de genre, par exemple.
Vous dites pour criminaliser?
Criminaliser.
Oui. Oui, alors ça,
d'autres choses, quoi.
même dans les pays du Moyen-Orient, hein, c'est souvent comme ça et
Oui.
c'est atteinte à la pudeur, ce genre de choses. Mais c'est pour ça aussi qu'une législation spécifique qui protégerait, enfin, quand on crée une législation spécifique à l'égard de l'orientation sexuelle et l'identité de genre, ça peut contribuer à faire en sorte que ces autres dispositions ne soient plus appliquées. Parce qu'on du coup, on a une législation positive qui est claire.
Mhm. Mais c'est un long cheminement, quoi, l'acquisition des droits.
Pardon? J'ai pas entendu.
L'acquisition des droits humains, c'est un long cheminement. La législation en fait partie, mais il n'y a pas que ça, quoi. Ça
Non,
ne change pas tout du jour au lendemain, quoi.
exactement. Il y a les lois et l'application des lois. Ça, c'est sûr. Ouais.
Şöyle, ben aynı zamanda LGBT Derneği'nin de avukatıyım ve sahada da çalışıyorum. Bununla birlikte trans mahpusları gerçekten bu rapor yazım sürecinde ziyaret etmeye çalıştık. Gerçekten sunumda bahsettiğim örnekleri birebir yaşayan ve deneyimleyen trans mahpuslarla görüştük. Bunların içerisinde tamamen cinsiyet uyum süreci olarak Türkiye'de tanımladığımız süreci tamamen tamamlamış şekilde erkek cezaevinden kadın cezaevine sevki gerçekleşmiş olanlar vardı. Ancak tabii ki Türkiye'de LGBT artıları tamamen kriminalize edilen bir kültür ve bu kültürün de cezaevine yansımadığını düşünmek imkansız. Orada aynı şekilde sadece iki örnek vermek istiyorum. Birincisi trans bir kadın üzerinden örneği veriyorum. Bir de trans bir erkek üzerinden örnek vereceğim. Buradaki özellikle kadın cezaevine geçtiği zaman rahat edebileceğini düşünen danışanımız, trans mahpus, kadın cezaevinde de aslında kadınlar tarafından da aynı şekilde fobiye maruz kaldığını söyledikten sonra cezaevi yönetiminin bize söylediği şey mecburen artık hani biz onu tek kişilik bir koğuşa aldık gibi bir noktada ve aslında örneğin ayda bir bahçede birçok mahpusla vakit geçirebilmek için bir zaman dilimi tanımış olsa bile onda bile bir gözetim altında olduğunu söyledi ve ona ilişkinde başvuruları devam ediyor. Trans erkekler için ise süreç zaten öncelikle işte kadın cezaevlerine tabii ki özellikle maalesef cinsiyet hanelerindeki o değişim büyük bir sıkıntı olduğu için kadın cezaevlerine yerleştiriyorlar. Velev ki şöyle bir şey oldu. Beyanını esas alıp erkek cezaevine koyduklarında ise hani burası biraz tetikleyici olabilir ama erkek cezaevine konulduğu zaman erkek cezaevinde yani sadece yerleştirildiği bir gün içinde o kadar fazla cinsel saldırıya maruz kalmış ki mesela tek gecede bu sefer o tecridi istiyor ama bu kişilerin orada yaşadıkları deneyimler oldukça yani çift yönlü bir noktada farklı bir şekilde devam ediyor. Özellikle hani cinsiyet kimliği üzerine burada büyük bir sıkıntı var ve ya biliyorsunuz Türkiye'de özellikle böyle bir politika olmadığı için de LGBT artılar için böyle çok kısa süreli takip ettiğimiz şehir şehir belli başlı şehirlerin özel bir koğuş açılıyor. O şehirlere doğru hepsinin bir arada olması için uğraş veriliyor ama tabii bu aynı zamanda yine bir damgalama gibi bir noktaya gidip bu koğuşları da istemiyorlar. Biraz hani soruyu tam böyle duyamadım. Biraz ama eksik bir şey varsa. Hı.
Just Türkçe söyleyeyim sonra Fransızca isterseniz çevireyim. Mesela Azerbaycanlı bir trans kadın belki tanırsınız. Halen Türkiye'de cezaevinde. Sibel adında bir trans kadın. Mesela konsolosluk, Azerbaycan konsolosluğu bu yargılama sürecinde bizim vatandaşımızdır dedi. Yargılama bitti, bu bizim vatandaşımız değil dedi. Mesela böyle bir örnek üzerinden gittiğimizde Sibel ismini değiştirmek istediğinde kimlikte ya da işte bu cinsiyet geçiş operasyonları yapmak istediğinde çok büyük sorunlar yaşadı. Ben Sibel'in bizzat görüşüne gittim geldim. Mesela bunun gibi örnekler üzerinde dedim ki mesela hem mülteci hem hapiste olunca bir trans biri olarak ekstra nasıl sorunlar yaşanıyor ve çözüm yolları nasıl bulunur?
Tamam ya, bunun üzerinden de Sibel...
Belki çeviri gerekiyor. Est-ce que vous avez besoin? Je fais le traduction. Okey, d'accord.
Tamam. Şimdi verdiğin örneğin özellikle Azerbaycan konusunda şöyle bir şey var. Türkiye'nin tabii ki bu Türkiye Cumhuriyetler üzerinden kurduğu mülteci politikası çok ayrı. Özbek, Azerbaycan veya Türkmenistan'dan gelenler için mesela bir politika, Türk soylu olmakla ilgili farklı bir politika, aynı zamanda kurumlar içerisinde İl göç vesaire toplumsal alanda da onlara yaklaşım çok ayrı. Bu ceza sistemi içerisinde de farklı bir uygulamaya gidiyorlar ve hani o yüzden ben biraz daha bu ayrımı altını çizmek istedim Azerbaycan üzerinden bir örnek verdiğinde. Zaten sistematik olarak yani mülteci trans ya da mülteci LGBT artı olduğu anda şöyle bir politikası var Türkiye'de uygulanan. Herhangi bir konuda şikayete gittiniz diyelim. Basit, komşunuz sizi rahatsız ediyor. Bununla ilgili bir şikayete gittiğiniz anda bile siz şikayetçi olsanız bile otomatik olarak siz sınır dışı kararlarıyla karşı karşıya kalma ile karşı karşıyasınız. Yani hemen sizi mesela sadece bilgisine başvuran olarak çağırıyorlar merkezden. Yani bu konuyla ilgili bir ifadede bulun diye. Bunun sonucunda dahi kendinizi birden sınır dışı işlemi, geri gönderme merkezleri içerisinde bulabilirsiniz. Burada uygulayıcıların bazılarının işte bahsettiğim işte Türkiye Cumhuriyeti, Türk soylu vatandaşlara ilişkin gösterdiği iltimas, bu kişi bir trans olduğu zaman ya da bir LGBT artı olduğu zaman o da kalkıyor. O milliyetçi yakınlaşma, kişi böyle LGBT artı olduğu zaman da o da ortadan kalkıyor. O yüzden Azerbaycan örneği de bu yüzden çok önemli bir örnek. Bunu da değinmiş oldum. Yani hiçbir şekilde zaten Türkiye'de bir mülteci LGBT artıyı tek başına herhangi bir kuruma göndermemek üzerine biz de bir politika yürütüyoruz. İl Göç İdaresi'ne giderken eşlik etmeye çalışıyoruz. Karakola gittiğinde karakolda yani orada bir etki yaratmak anlamında. Çünkü herhangi bir kuruma girdiği zaman bütün evrakları düzgün olabilir. Bütün evrak, hiçbir sorun olmayabilir. Sadece sayı artırmak için İçişleri Bakanlığı sayı artırmak için bu kişileri çok hızlı bir şekilde işlem yapabilir, sınır dışı edebilir, hiçbir gerekçe olmayabilir ve burada da direkt hedef olarak da bir LGBT artı çok kolay olabilir.
Oui, par rapport bon, je pense que Raphaël peut-être connaît mieux par rapport aux demandes qu'ont reçues 360 pour des personnes trans incarcérées en Suisse romande. Oui, il y a des gens qui savent dans la salle, a priori. Mais à Genève, il y a, oui, plusieurs personnes trans qui ont été incarcérées. Les affaires ont souvent été traitées sous l'angle des faits divers par la presse aussi, notamment, et c'est systématiquement des personnes assez précaires, souvent réfugiées ou sans statut légal en Suisse romande. On a eu aussi quelques travailleuses du sexe lors de l'interdiction Covid, puisqu'elles ont exercé alors que c'était interdit, et elles se sont fait attraper par les policiers d'une manière qui n'était pas très juridique par ailleurs. Et par rapport aux différents espaces de privation de liberté et des expériences trans et non-binaires en ces lieux, en effet, il y a énormément de similarités entre institutions psychiatriques, prisons, postes de police, centres de détention pour personnes migrantes. La recherche en Suisse au niveau académique, pour l'instant, elle s'est relativement limitée aux centres de détention et aux prisons, mais je sais qu'il y a des étudiantes X de la Haute École de Travail Social qui actuellement réalisent un mémoire sur l'incarcération des personnes trans et non binaires dans le système de prise en charge psychiatrique, mais je ne sais plus dans quel canton suisse.
Excusez-moi. En tout cas, je vais lui dire avant parce que mon français, c'est pas le meilleur français, mais peut-être que je vais demander à mon ami de faire un petit peu la traduction. Mon nom, c'est Carla Avelar et je suis salvadorien et je suis activiste de le droit humain aussi depuis longtemps dans mon pays. Et je suis réfugié à Genève depuis le 2017. Mais c'est clair pour moi que vous avez concentré votre travail principalement pour l'Europe, mais la question que je me pose maintenant, sera possible de faire une alliance de travail avec les pays de l'Amérique centrale et l'Amérique du Sud, bien sûr, parce qu'il y a des informations très, très importantes, il y a des situations très, très dures pour les personnes LGBTIQ+, en prison et qu'ils sont réfugiés aussi dans notre pays, comme les États-Unis aussi. Mais ma question principale, c'est comment nous pouvons travailler d'une manière plus organisée pour changer les systèmes bureaucratiques et la situation des personnes LGBTIQ+, dans la région de l'Amérique latine, bien sûr dans le monde entier, et si c'est possible es posible de... ok. Si es posible cambiar, si es posible tener un próximo encuentro donde se convoquen a organizaciones de diferentes países que tienen información importante y que refleja toda la situación de violencias que se reciben de representantes de los estados y de los mismos prisioneros que comparten prisión con nuestras compañeras en nuestros países y que muchas veces van más allá simplemente de acosos o ataques verbales, sino que también van dirigidos con violencia, asesinatos que se registran diariamente en nuestras prisiones. Por ejemplo, en El Salvador hay más de 36 meses ya de régimen de sección y esto ha expuesto brutalmente a compañeras trans a ser encarceladas con hombres que muchas veces las han agredido física, verbal y psicológica y sexualmente. La situación desde los años 1970 a la actualidad es muy poco lo que ha cambiado en el sistema judicial y penitenciario de la región latinoamericana. Como experiencia propia, como persona que estuve privada de libertad 5 años sin razón alguna, que fui violada, torturada y por poco cercenada de mis partes genitales por el director de centros penales, es el momento, creo yo, ideal para buscar un punto de partida donde podamos trabajar todas las regiones para visibilizar de una manera coordinada y con información para para lograr cambios significativos. Y me gustaría que me dieran respuesta a la pregunta que les lancé.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, it's rather than a question, it's a manifestation. Yeah, maybe in our other sessions, actually, we will talk about the Bolivia and other South American countries context. And what you are asking is actually rather than answering us today, and in this symposium, maybe after this symposium, maybe we can answer this question better. So by that, I'm closing the first session, and probably we're going to go to some break.